Good morning everyone and welcome to Trending in Japan. I'm Annie Shizuma, Staples Rodway's Team Japan Director. At Staples Rodway, we specialise in and are passionate about Japanese business. The Japan-New Zealand Business Council's 43rd conference will be held in Wellington from tomorrow. So we thought it was an opportune time to hold this seminar with the parties we do business with. Japan is the world's third largest economy with discerning, sophisticated consumers. However you may feel about Trump's recent win, Prime Minister Abe was the first world leader to meet President-elect Trump in New York last week, reinforcing the significance of the Japanese market. Clearly, even Trump realises Japan is one of the most profitable, important markets in the world. New Zealand products are highly respected in Japan, and when Japan hosts the Rugby World Cup in 2019 and the Olympics in 2020, brand New Zealand will be further strengthened, presenting great opportunities for your business. Japan is unique and complex, requiring a lot of patience, integrity, and respect. If you get it right in Japan, you can succeed anywhere in the world. We are very fortunate today to have the Vice President of JETRO, Ms. Sato, and Ms. Tsunaga of Marunouchi Business Consultants, who have both flown in from Tokyo. A special thanks to Ms. Tsunaga, who has come specifically to talk to you today, and who was kindly introduced by Ms. Ashikaga of AOM Immigration Consulting, who is also in the audience today. Last year, Ms. Tsunaga presented at a seminar in Australia and as a result is now assisting Australian corporates buying hotels in Japanese ski areas and helping bring Australian chocolate to the Japanese market. Ms. Tsunaga's husband is also with us today. He is an avid rugby supporter. He has his Rugby World Cup Japan badge on for 2019, and he is the managing partner of a large Japanese audit corporation with 250 people. We are also looking forward to hearing from Craig Armstrong at NZTE, Mr. Hayashi from JETRO Auckland, New Zealand Hothouse Tomatoes, and Dad's Pies, who will tell you how they started trending in Japan. Please hold questions to the end. I'll now pass you to Ms. Sato of JETRO. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Yuri Sato, Vice President of JETRO. Thank you very much for participating in today's seminar, Trending in Japan. I would like to welcome all of you. It is a great honor for us to co-host this seminar here in Auckland, focusing on the attractiveness of Japanese markets. JETRO was appointed by the Japanese government as the core organization to draw investment from overseas into Japan. Over the past 10 years, we have supported about 15,000 foreign companies into Japan. If there are one thing I can say for certain, based on this experience, it is this: now is the time to invest in Japan. Why? Because the business environment in Japan has improved drastically. From the result of the survey of JETRO for foreign companies in Japan, 41% answered that they feel business environment in Japan has improved. Given that this figure was 33% last year, the evaluation raised 8 points just in 1 year. What has been changing? The respondents have brought out some improvements. For instance, simplified investment procedures, decreased corporate taxes, regulatory reforms such as the opening of the electricity market, and the revision of Pharmaceutical Affairs Act to promote the regenerative medicine industry. It can be said that all of these are the results of the Abenomics, the economic policy of the current Abe administration. Furthermore, Japan is now blessed with golden opportunity. As Ms. Arnett already mentioned, we have the 2019 Rugby World Cup and the 2020 Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics. These milestone events are expected to boost the number of foreign visitors, including visitors from New Zealand, beyond the current record-breaking numbers, 20 million visitors per year. As foreign visitors increase, investment from those foreign countries into Japan in the tourist industry also increases. Japan is also praised as research and development activities, especially in the field of life science and ICT industries. Japan now enjoys a vast market which extends beyond Tokyo. It boasts a sophisticated business infrastructure, reasonable business costs, and comfortable living environments. New Zealand and Japan are important partners, sharing common value in free trade. With recent events such as Brexit and election of Donald Trump in the United States, indications of anti-free trade sentiment and isolationism seem to be prevailing around the world. However, it is precisely because of this trend that we must join hands and work together to disseminate the value of free trade. In this regard, it was wonderful news that the Parliament of New Zealand passed the TPP bill last week. Japan will follow soon. Lastly, I hope that today's seminar will be beneficial to all of you. If you have interest in Japan, please remember our catchphrase, talk to JETRO first. Thank you very much.
Konnichiwa, morena, and good morning everyone, and welcome to NZTE. Nice to see you all, and thank you for coming. It's a pleasure, Simon and Eddie, to share the morning with you, and look forward to you guys adding some practical insights and examples to some of the messages that I've got this morning. With 130 million odd people, our first perspective of Japan is always reasonably overwhelming. I think that in the number of visits that we've made there, even small niches of that market can prove to be very valuable to New Zealand companies. There is a large amount of investment in Japan by New Zealand companies, some of them corporates, but some of them SMEs. And equally, there are some significant investments in New Zealand by a number of Japanese corporates such as Kirin and Suntory, Asahi, Mitsui, but increasingly interest from Japanese corporates looking to New Zealand companies to form partnerships. Partnerships really that are going to drive and overcome some of the struggles and the issues that the Japanese market is facing at the moment, and I'll get to some of those in a moment. Just a note on the size of the market there. Sometimes numbers up on a slide mean very little to us. $5 trillion is essentially about 35 times the size of the New Zealand market and about 10 times the size of the Chinese market. It's an advanced economy, it's a very developed market, and it's sensational to see the interest from Japan in New Zealand companies and in New Zealand market. Very pleasing. As our fifth largest trading partner, there is still significant interest in both our manufactured outputs. Products like aluminium are still trending very strongly, but also increasingly in some of the ingredients that are coming out of our horticulture, our dairy, and our food industries. And in return, we're still seeing a lot of opportunity to integrate electronics and industrial equipment into Japanese corporate opportunities. We've been pursuing a goal of a free trade agreement with Japan for some time. Just last week we had a business down here, Global Nutrition Group, and for those of you in the food and beverage industry, you might have been part of some of that visit, where there was an expressed interest in some of the seafood, some of the natural products, ingredient solutions that are available to Japan. From our perspective, and from a number of businesses' perspectives, hopefully you guys can confirm or deny it later on, but Japan is a top profit centre for most of the businesses that we work with. There's not a lot of discounting that goes on into the market. We get fair value out of the products that we're trading up there. So a very valuable market for us, and a very valuable market to, as we just heard, to be patient and have a good strategy for. I just want to cover 3 or 4 quick things from a market overview perspective, and let me start with consumers first of all. We were up there this year immersing ourselves in retail and convenience. For those of you that have been there, it's a very vending-centric market, but there's some significant shifts taking place in the Japanese market. And the first thing that we notice is that consumers are really looking to drive down the cost of their living, searching for value and searching for time saving as more and more people are taken up into the market. And I'll get to women in business in a second. The second thing we noted was that, like other parts of Asia, more and more Japanese consumers are online. 90% of them online every day, and over half of them are online in a social sense. It means that the use and identification of influencers in the market, of key figures to try to raise the perspective and the value of your brands and your products is quite essential to success in getting awareness and sales. The third thing on this page, spending to increase quality of life. As an ageing society, Japan has some big issues that New Zealand companies are quite uniquely placed to help out with. Diabetes, stress, blood pressure are all afflictions that New Zealand products and products from the seafood industry, the horticulture industry, can easily solve. And the other point there, green influences, like Europe, I suppose, the developed nature of the Japanese market means that a lot of the interest in New Zealand products is actually anchored in the safety and the trust measures that we are able to back our products up with. I'm not sure the word for it, Mr. Hayashi. Is it anshin? Anshin? Yeah, safety. So it's one of those things that when you're going up to the market and getting prepared for it, know your stories and know the factors that count and support your products. The second trend I'd like to just talk through quickly is societal, and I mentioned the ageing society. A fourth of the Japanese population is aged over 65. I remember a presentation that Mr. Hayashi gave us 6 months or a year ago now on Abenomics, and from memory, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the second arrow was very much about trying to revive innovation, revive investment in Japan to start meeting some of the issues that society is facing. The opportunity for us is to be able to take some of the raw materials and the ingredients that we produce in a trusted and safe supply chain, and be able to integrate those with Japanese corporates to find a solution in their brands, in their formats, in their products in the market. It's a very real opportunity, perhaps one of the most real opportunities I've seen in the decade or so that I've been active in the Japanese market myself. Corporates notwithstanding, small and medium enterprises still make up the bulk of the Japanese market. About 99% of them, or close to 4 million. I think the business population in New Zealand is closer to 250,000, 250,000 odd. So 4 million SMEs, plenty of entrepreneurial spirit alive, and plenty of opportunities outside of the main centres of Tokyo and others. Product. Look, this is a story that's probably best articulated by Simon when he gets up and speaks about some of New Zealand Hothouse opportunities. But needless to say, packaging in this advanced market is absolutely critical. Appearance, product appearance is probably one of the foremost attributes that you need to build into your success and your product. I spent a number of years working for Cadbury out in New Zealand, selling New Zealand chocolate to the Japanese, not Australian. But we couldn't work out why we were failing. And it wasn't until our second or third trip up into the market that we realised that our Moro bar was about 1.5 centimetres too long to fit in a vending machine. We had our packaging and our format completely wrong for the way that the Japanese were purchasing that product. So we talk about patience, we talk about trips into the market, we talk about some of the simple things that you need to notice. But for us, it came down to 1 centimetre too long Moro bar, easily fixed. Which sort of talks about the single serve market and the smaller size. And that too is a story I'll leave to Eddie because you've got an example that far beats any of mine. Endorsements, look, Mond Awards, Red Dot Awards if you're a manufacturer, any type of food awards, it's important to try to amplify that on packaging or at least in your website and communication. And I spoke a second ago about trust, action and safety. The opportunities then for us in summary, it's probably never been as good a time to be in the food and beverage industry and ingredients as it is right now. We see a very open market, we see a very willing corporate sector in Japan, and we see a number of New Zealand ingredient solutions and products that are able to be integrated for consumer benefit. Healthcare, big issue in Japan, one that they are looking hard to resolve, and we've got a medtech industry that can help and respond to that, both in hospitals and at home. Renewable energy, especially geothermal, and as Japan reduces its reliance on nuclear, software, electronics and engineering, if you're able to integrate to that corporate sector, I'm sure that success will easily follow. That's me. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I am Michiro Hayashi, the Managing Director of JETRO Auckland. I am truly honored to have a chance to talk in front of you, such a big distinguished guests about the business between Japan and New Zealand. And before getting into the story, please let me introduce our organization, JETRO, Japan External Trade Organization. Our organization is a government-funded organization. Naturally, they promote the trade between Japan and the world. And established in 1958, and we now maintain the 73 offices worldwide. And even though it says, it says 39, but actually we have now 45 offices all over Japan. That means that we have a great domestic network as well, which is a little bit unusual for a trade promotion organization like us. And today's topic are the business between New Zealand and Japan. Yes, first I would like to introduce what is Japan, which is the word well presented by Mr. Armstrong. And actually, I would like to add some a bit more information about this. And and then when when I would like to introduce the Japan, maybe your question could be, why Japan? Yeah, maybe you might think that is a mature and low growth economy. Let me point out the 4 reasons to think about it. One is the big and sophisticated market, and innovation hub, and business-friendly infrastructure, and comfortable living. First, to illustrate the sheer size of Japan's market, I'd like to call the attention on this map. Yeah, quite a big market, 30 times bigger than New Zealand. And Tokyo alone, Kanto region, this is the same size as Russia. So this is a big market, but not only big. The economy is well characterized by the consumers and the businesses, which appreciates high-end products and services. Let me show you the example. Kiwi fruits, one of your biggest export to the world. Japan, yes, this is Japan. Japan is the biggest exporting destination. Yeah, almost equivalent to the total EU. And the amount is great, but this is a price. Japan is the highest price. You see, so you can sell kiwi fruit the best price in the world, much better than any other single markets. So this is quite, of course, your product is good. So that is why that is appreciated. This can happen in Japan. Japan is certainly not the nearest country for New Zealand, but I can say fairly that it is the nearest advanced mega market. Second, Japan has a great appeal as an innovation hub. As you can see in this chart, Japan has the highest ratio of R&D compared to GDP, number one. This supports the fact that Japan is a sophisticated market again. I believe these features must be attractive for many international businesses, including exporters. However, please let me point out it is desirable for direct investors as well. Let me explain the stable and convenient business infrastructure. The World Economic Forum declared Japan's business environment as the most sophisticated in Asia. You can see from the figure that, sorry, next slide. Yes, this is one example, the transportation networks in Japan. You can find out the transportation infrastructure stretches across Japan. The fourth is the safe and comfortable community infrastructure. The UK's information magazine, Monocle, released a ranking of the top 25 most livable cities in the world. Believe it or not, Tokyo came the first. Fukuoka, 7th, and Kyoto, 9th. And as you have acknowledged, the international companies praise Japan's security. In order to do it and to do in, Japan is ideal. And but maybe for the potential direct investors, I suspect you still may have some concern about the cost in Japan. If so, you can put those concerns to rest. Certainly, from the results of the research on the foreign affiliated companies in Japan, high cost was the biggest reason, biggest concern over Japan. But that is drastically reduced recent years. And expenses for office rent and housing are comparatively lower than those of any other major urban areas in Asia. And from the personal experience, yeah, things in New Zealand is much more expensive than in Japan. Yeah. And also the drastic, yes, this is the cost matter, and the reforms are going on as well. With regard to the business cost, corporate tax has been reduced to the 20% range from this April. And the electricity retail market is open, just been liberalized, ending 60 years of monopoly control. And with reform to the medical field, Japan is now the ideal place to develop medicine and medical equipment. So it is my hope that by the end of today's seminar, you are all left with the same impression. Japan has changed. In addition to these kind of reforms, if the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, has a chance to take off, yeah, it is certainly, it will be the trigger for the reforms and business chances. To sum up, it may be tempting to discuss Japan as a simply lucrative export market with 120 million potential sophisticated consumers, the nearest mega market. Yeah, that is really comfortable. But then exporting can be the key stepping stone to expanding your business. But here, I would like to challenge you to take the business ambition further, either now or in future, to really take your business to the next level. Establishing your business in Japan is crucial. By doing so, your business will be provided with 3 key advantages. One is establishing yourself as a local. When consumers know they can actually meet the business behind the product in the country, the product automatically feels more genuine. Many of you have experienced the unconfident feeling towards the product after reading that the company's closest contact information is some unknown street and rather than clouds and tens of thousands of miles away. But if you are there, your products yourself will be trusted a lot. Second advantage is a better relationship with your business partners and consumers. Business relationship can be successfully built and maintained over meals and coffee, not through the word-sensitive emails or awkward Skype calls. So, and third is market engagement. If you have people on the ground in Japan, you can witness market trends developing in the moment, which grants you the flexibility to take advantage of them. So you can market your products by yourself. Yeah, that is a big advantage. However, it is reasonable that New Zealand farmers may be intimidated by the size of the Japanese market. That is both normal and understandable. However, these doubts should not stop you. You do not need to be Fonterra in order to be successful in Japan. I will show you the 2 examples of the small or the medium-sized New Zealand farms who is successful in Japan. First one is the Aozora, which was established in 2003 with the goals to the market New Zealand-grown produce throughout Asia, set up their first foreign office in Kobe, Japan. First one is Kobe. And now the Aozora Group currently handles over 20,000 metric tons of Southern Hemisphere fresh produce annually. Aozora stated that growth is stable with future prospects, definitely improving with the younger generation more likely to the new products. Aozora emphasized that needs to be there could be some clues. One thing is be patient and understanding with the Japanese business partner. Yeah, those are the key to their success in Japanese markets. Yeah, next example is the New Zealand Bloom. Who is not too big but still successful in Japan. This company has established in the 1992. New Zealand Bloom identified Japan as an important market, especially for the New Zealand company's perspective. So they visited us in year 2000. Mr. Michael Limbrick, the manager of the New Zealand Bloom's Auckland office, stated, setting up in Japan is reasonably easy. JETRO's bureaucracy, actually we have some bureaucracy, to be frank with you. Was efficient. Not too bad. And 15 years later, New Zealand Bloom was grown to become the global market of the New Zealand flowers with offices in Auckland, Los Angeles, and Osaka. For the future, New Zealand Bloom is now becoming more mature with operations always focused on expanding. So from these examples, you can find out, you don't have to be Fonterra. Yes, my message is that you can do it. And finally, time is just coming. Just let me introduce our organization. We, the JETRO, supports you. For companies investing in Japan for the first time, we provide one-stop services free of charge to help them get started. We have already supported more than 14,000 businesses from all over the world, and over 1,400 international companies start operation in Japan. So, and this kind of work is not done by us. We have, as I said before, we have 45 offices all over Japan. We have our connection to the local communities very strong. So that not only Japan, actually those two companies I introduced are not based in Tokyo, other area. That was quite easy support for us. So my final question today will be when is the time to think about invest in Japan? My answer clearly is should be now. And so if you have any questions or if you need some support, just talk to JETRO first. Lastly, just introduce my colleague, the Max. Yes, he's the newly hired my colleague. So if you have any questions, yes, he has a New Zealand accent, not like me. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me to address to you today. My name is Akemi Sunaga. I'm a certified public accountant and the president of Marunouchi Business Consulting. I'm very honored to be able to speak to you today. This is my first time visit to New Zealand, and I feel so good to be here in a beautiful country and have already enjoyed some good wines. Last December, I had the pleasure of meeting with Miss Annette Azuma in Tokyo, And she suggested that it would be a good idea to make a presentation in New Zealand on the issues facing corporations who wish to do business in Japan. So, in cooperation with Staples Rodway Chartered Accountants, New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, and JETRO, this seminar was organized. And I'm very happy to be able to address you today on these important issues. So today, I'd like to talk to you about how to successfully set up a new business in Japan. I've divided my talk into 3 parts. First, I'll explain characteristics of the Japanese market. Second, I'll highlight key points to consider when advancing into Japan. And finally, I'll talk about 3 types of operations in Japan. So now, let's begin with my first point, which covers the characteristics of the Japanese market. If you take a look at this slide, you can see that there are 5 important characteristics to consider when entering the Japanese market. First, in Japan, personal connections are very important. I'm talking about building long-term relationships and loyalty. To put it simply, you provide a good product or service, you gain the trust of the other party, and you get more business. Now, this takes time. It's not something that happens right away. The lesson here is, don't rush into contracts. Instead, take the time to get to know people and establish relationships. The next point is a difference in communication styles. Generally, when doing business in Japan, and at large companies in particular, it can take a long time to reach a decision. This can be very frustrating even for Japanese people. You are told to hurry, and then halfway through, you are suddenly put on hold. All I can say is this happens frequently, so please expect this. Next, not only are Japanese inspection standards very strict, but so are consumers. Japanese consumers are the most picky in the world, and the Japanese market demands high quality and low prices. For example, if the package is slightly damaged, even only defective print quality, Japanese consumers will return the product and demand a refund or replacement. Next, competition is intense. Before taking any other action, you have to survey your market, and you have to know it well. Also, when it comes to raw materials and ingredients, Japanese regulatory standards are exceedingly strict. To meet them, we require heavy investment and high quality. And finally, on top of all this, the Japanese distribution system can be very complex depending on the industry. It can be very difficult to gain direct access to the retail level. Okay, so what kind of advice can I offer? Well, firstly, I'd say listen closely to your customer. What exactly does the customer want? You need to get a good idea of your customer's future needs, packaging specifications, material requirements, and so on. In Japan, these are considered very important, and if you fail to provide high quality in these areas, you will lose customers. Next, you need to ensure timely supply and delivery. Japan runs on time. A failure to meet time schedules is a serious obstacle to doing business there. And finally, you need a good interpreter. You must be alert, aware of cultural issues, and mindful of the differences between what is said and what is meant. So that covers my first point about characteristics of the Japanese market. Next, I'd like to highlight the 5 key things you should consider before an actual advance into the Japanese market. First, you need to do market research. Spend the time to gather information and do preliminary marketing. Second, check whether you need a license or not. Government websites are very useful to see what licenses are required and how difficult it is to get them and keep them. Thirdly, decide on the business structure for your advance. Are you going to go as a subsidiary company, a branch office, or representative office? I'll discuss these in more detail shortly. Next, decide on office location. And then finally, once you are in Japan, decide how you are going to handle compliance requirements relating to taxation, the social insurance system, business licensing, and so on. So now I'd like to explain more about the types of operations in Japan. There are basically 3 legal structures you can use. First, subsidiary company. Second, branch office. And third, representative office. Each has its own advantages and disadvantages. First of all, a subsidiary company is a legal entity, a joint stock corporation or a limited liability company, which is established and registered in Japan under Japanese law. This is the most common format for overseas companies seeking to do business in Japan. The biggest merit is that publicly available documents attest to your corporate presence in Japan, and this gives you the all-important credibility. The demerit is that the initial capital required is about 68,000 New Zealand dollars plus other legal costs to set up your business. The second type of structure is a branch office. A branch office is an office established in Japan and formally registered under Japanese law that acts as the Japanese branch of a foreign legal entity. Again, the merit is that publicly available documents attest to the legal presence of your branch office in Japan, thus giving it business credibility. It will cost approximately 3,200 New Zealand dollars to register the office. The demerit is the branch office is legally considered to be part of the headquarters company back home. Therefore, its tax liability in Japan is calculated based on the capitalization of the home company. And the final option is a representative office. This is generally established as a preliminary outpost from which we can explore prospects for a full-scale advance into Japan at a later date. The main advantage is there are no registration fees because no registration is required. The disadvantage is a representative office is, in principle, not supposed to serve as a base for business operations. So, to sum up, the best option for you will depend on your unique circumstances. We at MBC can support the setup of your new business in Japan that best suits your needs. So now, in closing, I'd like to share some information about my company. At MBC Group, we provide our clients with services tailored to fit their needs, be that for accounting or tax-related assistance, or for all manner of business support. So, if you are considering entering the Japanese market, please get in touch with me first. We can provide you specialized services, including introductions to business professionals, helping you set up your business in Japan, advice on accounting or tax matters once in Japan, M&A matchmaking and advisory services. Just let us know what you need, and we'd be happy to help. This is all for my presentation today. Thank you very much for your courtesy and your attention. Thank you.
Right, good morning everyone. My name is Simon Watson and I'm from the New Zealand Hothouse Group. I just want to share a little bit of our journey. We're certainly not formally trained, we're not experts, we're just farmers. So, and some of what I'm going to talk to you about is some of the mistakes that we've made, and I hope that maybe we can share some of them so you don't make the same blunders. So, and I'm going to gloss over some of the stuff because it's been dealt with already today, so there's no point in going over it again. But basic number that we went in with 4 years ago, we went to Japan, was there's enough food produced here for 30 million people, and yet we're only 4.6, so we have to export. That's we're forced to, otherwise there's no market. And certainly in the case of tomatoes, at this time of the year, there's 4 to 5 times as many tomatoes produced as there are the population to absorb it. So it's pretty important. A little bit about us: we're a 100% New Zealand owned and operated company, founded by Brett Wharf in 1984. We have about 20 hectares of glass in the South Auckland area, and we've got about 330 full-time employees across the group. We produce about 15 million units of produce a year, and it's distributed through the main. We are essentially a local market operator, so you find our products in both the major supermarket chains. We're a heavy supplier to the food service industry, and we're also New Zealand's largest producer of specialty tomatoes. It's a lot of the biggest producer of baby tomatoes. And we export throughout the Pacific Rim. So for us, basically wherever we can get a single flight, so 11, 12-hour flight, that's our zone. And we're a vertically integrated group. So we grow, we pack, we process. We have a large logistics arm servicing other growers, and big marketing operation, and export. We're relatively new to it, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So what our hypothesis was 4 years ago was that we could take out the tomatoes we were producing and try and sell them to the world. And I'm not sure whether we were arrogant or ignorant, but it's just the dumb farmer in us, I guess. We figured we could go to Japan and they just buy our tomatoes. And I guess what we didn't realise was what a long game it is there. And we're used to rocking into a town, going to Dunedin or somewhere like that, and walking out that night with orders in our pockets. And that does not happen in Japan, and it was a bit of a wake-up call to us. But effectively, as I said earlier, the New Zealand tomato market or produce market is grossly oversupplied, and that capacity's got to go somewhere. It's got to be really exported. So why we chose Japan was I had a mate up there, and he'd been involved in the in marketing New Zealand food up there for the last 25 years. And we looked at it and said, well, okay, you've got 120 million people, world's third largest economy. They import 61% of their food, so there's a lot of food comes across the border. Very high employment rate, so most people work, and much wealthier than we are here. And for us, most importantly, an 11-hour direct flight. And that was as I said, our educated guess. And from our point of view, there's 89% of the world's population is in the Northern Hemisphere. And so in our summertime, our peak production time, we're able to move product up there. And that was our hypothesis. And it is proving to be correct, although there's a few bumps along the way. We trialled, as part of the process, a lot of new varieties, because the stuff that we sent up there initially, we thought it was really good, tasted great. And we got it up there, and I won't say they hated it, but they were a bit more polite than that. But it didn't resonate with the Japanese palate at all. So we had to change what we grew. Initially, the product we were sending up had a 4.5% bricks or sugar level. And the product that we're shipping up there now is around about 10, so that's a huge shift in what we've been growing, and a huge change for our growers to be able to say, well, hey, this is lots of fights, I guess, across the boardroom table. We don't really want to do this, and I said, well, I'm sorry, you're going to do it, and we're going to try this. This is the future for us. So we have aligned our production with the Japanese consumer demand and taste, and as a result we've developed new products here in New Zealand that were specifically developed for Japan that now we're introducing into our customers down here, and waking up waking them up to away from the bland tomato that we used to grow and into these really high flavoured sweet fruits that we do now. And I guess from our point of view, one thing we did well was the Japanese customers that we talked to. They liked the fact that we were flexible, the fact that we were willing to change to suit what they wanted. And provenance plays a big part in when you're marketing in Japan. So you can front up there, and they want to know about you. They want to know who you are. They want to know they like the fact that you're the grower, and they like that story, and they like to be able to tell that story right down to the supermarket floor area where the point of sale material and the point of purchase material talks about who you are. And I'll talk about that in a little bit when we talk about our chairman who visited the market. We use a lot of beneficial insects as opposed to agrochemicals, and it's a natural way of controlling bad insects and avoiding the use of harmful sprays. And of course we're pushing the New Zealand food safety record, which is excellent. That's an ad we've used a few times over the years. We still continue to use it because that's our message. Some growers reduce insects using sprays. We reduce sprays by using insects. So that's a big part of our philosophy. Obviously, we've got a great bond with New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, and they've been enormously helpful to us in what's been a fairly rocky road, but it's starting to grow, bear fruit. We visited before we went up there and had a good look around, and my old mate Rob Morris, who an ex-NZTE employee, has lived up there for more than 25 years, so he's helped us a lot as well. It really does pay to have somebody up there who's very fluent in Japanese and understands the market. And the initial data we got was summer data, and initially we were told there's no market up here, you can't make money, it won't stack up. And when we got up there, we actually went up in the winter time and found that the prices were 3 times what they were in the summer. So, yep, there was a market and it was pretty lucrative. So be careful what you're told, I guess, is a mistake initially. We were given information that was not accurate for what we wanted. And the obvious basics, write a plan, figure out what your goals are, make sure that the people you're dealing with are on board and understand exactly what your specific goals are. So they thought a tomato was just a round thing you sliced and chucked on a hamburger. That was not our goal. That was not what we were trying to. We had to really re-educate our people up there. And also figure out what you want to be. Do you want to be a commodity operator, which is essentially what our business was 15 years ago? And if we still operated in commodities, we would be gone. We would have disappeared by now. There's just no money in it. Or do you want to be a high-end specialist? And I'll talk about that demographic. I may as well do it now. In terms of Japan, we started to get very, very focused about it. I mean, we talked about 120 million people, but within the greater Tokyo area, it's 36 million people. So that's within an hour's train trip from central Tokyo. If you take the top 5% of that market, that's 1.8 million people. That's effectively a city bigger than Auckland. So you start to understand the size or the quantum of the opportunity. You need to get everyone on board, and this was a mistake we made early on. And it would be about 2 years ago. I was with some NZTE representatives, and they said, "How are you going?" I said, "Well, to be honest, we're finding it pretty tough." Where at that time, I think the exchange rate was in the 90s, and we were considering pulling out. And it was an old, I can't remember the name of the guy, but he was great. He talked me through it, and he said, "Well, where's your problem?" I said, "Well, I'm spending all this money up there, and I'm getting grief from my board." And he said, "Well, tell me about your board," and I did. He said, "Well, have you taken your chairman? How many times have you taken your chairman to Japan?" I said, "Well, I haven't." He said, "Well, here's your problem." I said, he said, "Next trip you need to take your chairman and show him what's involved and give him a feel of the market." And so that's what we did. And funny story, we were with a customer there, and this guy loved to take photographs of your visitors, and he took a photo of our chairman and his wife and then sent us down, look, I want this packaging, and you probably can't see it, but it's our chairman and his wife on the packaging. So that's the sort of provenance they like. He loved that he met our chairman, the chairman loved the experience, and as a result, the whole game changed for us, and so he's absolutely on board, understands it and gets it. And not just the chairman, but you've got to have everybody else involved. And we talked earlier, some of the speakers talked about the importance of quality, and that for us is everybody involved, right down to the factory worker or the people in the glass houses. If they're not plugged in and understanding that everything's got to be perfect, then it breaks down right the way up the chain. So everybody's got to be involved. Hurdles, yep, you'll get heaps of them. We got a few, but I guess it's a case of being focused, like all things. And for us, it's about regular self-analysis. So at the end of each season, we sit down and it's that old thing. We look at what we need to keep doing that works for us. We look at what we need to stop doing, and we also look at what we need to start doing. That simple self-analysis, we do it every season, and realign what we're doing. Because if you don't evolve with the market, it won't be successful for you. And so I talked about the Tokyo area. I mean, in those numbers earlier, it's one port, established distribution, a great wealth demographic, and of course a very established convenience market. Push the New Zealand story, and early part of what we were doing, we were not doing that well enough, and NZTE do a wonderful job of building that provenance around your company and your product and pushing the New Zealand story. That's really, really important to succeeding, because why? You front up into a buyer's office and you're probably one of 50 on the day, and if you don't stand out, you will just fail into blandness. So really, really important to build that Kiwi story. Packaging. I mean, our initial packaging, we sent up our standard 250 gram product we have here in New Zealand, and it was a disaster. I mean, we couldn't hit the right price points because it was too big. People looked at it and they said, oh, it's too big, I won't buy it. So we immediately had to drop down to that 180 gram pack, which has worked really, really well for us. And we've got that operating in a number of different branded products throughout the market. If you've got any Japanese language, get it checked and double check, because if it's wrong, it can be disastrous. Some other hurdles we had, our initial, as I said, our initial varieties did not appeal to the Japanese palate, and it tasted great to us, but we weren't the market, so we had to make some changes and try some new products. That's a trial row we do. I mean, we're doing trials all the time, but we get Japanese tasting focus groups to taste our products and try them and report back to us to make sure we're getting it right. Because it's quite a large, obviously, Japanese population here in Auckland, and they're really, really helpful. Freight systems. We're on version 12 of our standard operating procedure. We've changed it and changed it, changed it. You're just all the time evolving. We thought we had really cool systems. Well, they weren't. So that was another thing we had to learn. Our initial research was inaccurate. It was taken in the summertime. It was supposed to be in their winter, which was our summer. So make sure the research lines up with what you're trying to do. And samples, really, really important. In the early days, I would build the samples myself, and now I've built a standard operating procedure for staff to do it from here on. But really, really important. If the sample looks like crap, forget it. You're not going to sell anything. Get as close to the top of the organisation as you can, and believe me, entertaining is really, really important. And if you're not into it, you really need to consider something different, because and when the Japanese love to visit, they love to visit your business, and when they come down, roll out the red carpet, give them a good time and show them through the property and get them to understand that provenance we talked about. We own our own brands. We're just not in the commodity business. we're in New Zealand, we're flying great distances, we're selling into a premium market. You must own your own brands. And we have our brands registered in Japan. So IP is very, very important. I talked about at the end of the season, that self-analysis. What do we need to keep doing? What do we need to stop doing? And what do we need to start doing? I mean, you can apply that to anything, but really, really important for developing and evolving the business. So we've developed a lot of new brands as a result of this, which are now selling in our domestic market. We're also selling those same brands into Singapore and now into Taiwan as well. So, and all of that has come out of dealing with Japan and the reception we've had in Japan. So it's been great for us. And of course, the relationship we have with NZTE has been fabulous, and I mean, we can't thank them enough. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
And good morning. My name is Eddie Grooten from Dad's Pies. Quite clearly, the Hothouse chairman is much better looking. I've been often to Japan, and they've never taken a photo of me to put on the packaging. I'd like to acknowledge three of my guests today, which is Grant Humphreys, who is our agent in Japan, who's lived there for over 20 years and married a Japanese lady. Ben Bernstone is our business manager, and Tom Grooten is my youngest son. And without these three people, I actually wouldn't be standing here. So thank you guys for coming and being my groupie. It is only confirmed this morning by a number of people that everything that you guys have gone through and explaining is exactly what we've gone through. And I always say, you don't end up with a face like this unless you go through a lot of pain. I would like Mr. Hayashi to talk to our agent in Japan to confirm with him that we can get the highest prices in Japan. That would be really good. Yeah. We seem to have a misunderstanding here. This is how we started. So Grant owns a company called MAD. It's a reflection of who he is. And he started off, he had his own retail business and started off buying pallet size orders with pies. And at some stage we said, Grant, what do you want to do? You want to do something real, or what are we going to do? So we sat down and talked about it. Come up with a whole new plan, and we had to both make commitments. And you talk about commitments of what our capacity is, what Grant's capacity is, how do we finance growth, because everybody understands that growth sucks cash. And it takes a lot of management to understand what happens when you really start rocking. The issue of hedging, we all understand the fluctuation of the dollar and the yen. And are we the right people to do business together? The answer, of course, was yes, because 4 years later we are still here, and even Grant wants to be here. New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, right from the beginning, because we were already exporting to Hong Kong and Singapore and Dubai at that point. So the relationship with New Zealand Trade and Enterprise and the IGF funding is very important. Their support, their understanding of strategies and what eventually the outcome of our strategy is. It's been confirmed the importance of local Japanese speaking people, and we had the luck having Grant there, of course. A unique selling proposal. So this is the question we came up. We all, in business, we all look for a unique selling proposal, either in product or in packaging. And when we looked at the Japanese market, we thought a pie has to be a USP. And many people have asked, pies in Japan? And my answer to that was always, 10 years ago, we didn't sell sushi. It didn't exist. So why wouldn't there be a pie in Japan? Even the KFCs and the McDonald's are successful in the Asian countries, which is fascinating. If they can be successful, we certainly can be with pies. Quality pies. The big challenge was, of course, as we talked about this morning, the expectations of the Japanese and the Japanese market in terms of weight, in terms of nutrition, the weight variance. To produce pies with a variance of 5% plus or minus is very precise manufacturing. And we can then decide, do we or don't we? And we have made that commitment to go that way. Customers is, of course, another challenge, but Grant has managed to build that relationship, and the trust is there, so it's easier to get product in. The E numbers, of course, was an expectation that they needed to go. And the advantage of what the Japanese market is by default forcing us into is an advantage for our domestic market. As a result of that, we're becoming a slicker business and a more streamlined business, and our product is improving as a result of the expectation of our Japanese customers. Here are some of our customers now. It's over 2 years now with Costco, Grant. Yeah, it's Peacock, Ministop, Co-op. We had a meeting a few months ago, and the people from Co-op explained to us that we are the very first company in New Zealand, a New Zealand company who supply a product, their first one on their shelves, as we are compliant. And they reiterated the fact that many Japanese companies don't even comply, as you had mentioned before. And so it's something we're really proud of, and it confirms that we're following the right path. Risk and management, our export license, as you can imagine, that in manufacturing, I'm not sure how different it is to growing tomatoes, Simon, but the compliance of manufacturing, specifically when you talk about meat products, is a battle. But we got there. An important part, of course, is the fact that we add value to our primary industry as we completely focus on using as many local produce as possible. Some of our results after hard work and investment. It's been a massive learning curve, a lot of traveling time, the customers we've gained and our compliance. And thanks to our determination of our people at work, because I couldn't have done that. They are the ones who stuck to it and scratching their head, and they think, how can somebody ask 1,000 questions about one tiny little thing? And it was continuous. And you think that you answered all the questions, but there was another range of questions, and you think, this is not possible. So it's been a fascinating experience. Enjoy your pie.
Thanks very much to all our presenters. We've all heard some fascinating things. I'm sure many of you may have questions, so I'd like to open it to the floor. Please put your hand up and we can assist with a mic if necessary. Do we have any questions? I'm wondering if I could ask one of the JETRO speakers to talk about Innovation Hub.
Yes, actually, it is a little bit difficult to answer what is the innovation hub. Actually, the individual Japanese region has some kind of some features area by area, I believe. For example, in the Nagoya area, the Chukyo area, that is quite known as the automotive industry. So, of course, that kind of industry is quite concentrated. Maybe if you have some specific interest in us, let's talk about it. And yes, maybe I can have some suggestions, and I'm happy to talk with our head office about your question.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Okay, well, the speakers will remain afterwards for about 20 minutes, so if you've got any questions, we're quite happy to answer them then. I'd like to thank all of the presenters again. I think what we have seen from the presentation, 3 things stuck in my mind. Number 1, patience. In Japanese, that is gaman. My husband is Japanese, and throughout our married life, and I have always been told gaman. Our children, right from when they were toddlers, it's been instilled into them, the Japanese ethic of gaman. Be patient as well as gambaru. Always do your best. So gaman, be patient. The high quality, we've seen how important that is in Japan. That is, so crucial if you want to succeed in Japan. The other thing is relationships, how paramount relationships are. I think what Simon said about after his chairman went up to Japan, how things really took off after that. The importance of relationships is incredibly important. So I'd like to thank the speakers once again and ask all of the speakers and Ms. Ashikaga to come to the front so that we can thank them in the appropriate way. Sato-san. Hayashi-san, if we can get all the presenters to stand along here. So if we could give everyone a round of applause. And in token of our appreciation, we have a lovely New Zealand wine for each of our speakers. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Judy. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your